Coastal Feuds episode 11 is in progress now. I hope everyone had an amazing Thanksgiving weekend, a great Thanksgiving, giving thanks to your friends, family, football, and of course, college football rivalry weekend. This past weekend, we saw the game, Michigan versus Ohio State. Michigan has won the last four meetings, including a 20 and a half point upset against Ohio State. No one was expecting this at all. Michigan was supposed to get blown out, but a huge upset. They just ran the ball. I mean, I believe it was the last 23 meetings have all been decided on who has more rushing yards in the end. And Michigan had 100 more rushing yards than Ohio State. Kalel Mullings just was outmanning the entire Ohio State defense and led them to the win.
Yeah, I feel like this is a game that I feel like this is a game every year where the standings don't really matter. It's a huge rivalry game. No matter if you're in Michigan's case 6-5 or Ohio State's case 10-1, both teams are going to show up and they're going to put up an absolute fight. But that was the case for one of them in the Wolverines. But Ohio State just didn't look ready to play. I believe that Ryan Day didn't do a great job preparing this team. He didn't show a whole lot of leadership, especially after the game during the little scuffle that was going around from Michigan trying to plant the flag at midfield. He kind of just sat there and watched the whole thing go down. Uh, I just feel like it was a very poor showing. Will Howard did have two picks along with Michigan's quarterback. Um, Not a great day passing the ball, but Khalil Mullins, he's just carried the whole offense. It was a super gritty game, not a super flashy game from either team, but Michigan pulled it out.
And the big takeaway from that I took from this game was the way Ohio State came into the game was they looked not to lose rather than wanting to win. They played it very safe. There was a time Davis Warren threw a very costly interception within the Michigan's own 20-yard line, and Ohio State called run, screen pass, run. Instead of trying to take advantage of their weapons in Emeka Buka and Jeremiah Smith, they were very conservative. It was honestly like the play calling throughout the entire game was very poor. There are two drives where they end up getting points were both because of the pass, and they just didn't pass the ball when they needed to. And that was just a cause of a lot of self-destruct from Ohio State. There's also just a lack of culture with Ryan Day. They're not as physical as Michigan, and this is a physical matchup between Michigan and Ohio State. There's always going to be lots of fighting, pushing, shoving, and Michigan has been more physical for the past 4 years, and that's why they're coming out on top.
I 100% agree with that, Tyler. I think, yeah, Ohio State. They came in this game. They looked like it was like chicken without their head because they looked like they had no idea what they were doing out there. You don't have a strong passing game for Michigan. That's been known for the entirety of the season. You have Kalel Mullings. Like Arjun said, he was carrying the entire Michigan team on his back. And when Ohio State had momentum, they completely just threw it in the trash. They really didn't capitalize on it. The one touchdown that they had, Will Howard who's going down on a 2 minute drive, and I think they basically threw every single play during that 2 minutes right before the half. And I think that speaks to the ability of that Ohio State team that they have shown glimpses and they have shown clearly that they are one of the best teams in the nation, obviously. But there's a lack of culture with Ryan Day. There's a lack of discipline, and just an overall lack of feeling like like they want to win. It doesn't look like they want to win. I agree with that 100%, Tyler. They're not taking advantage of momentum. I think Ryan Day had a couple poor calls, and I mean, I hate to think anything bad about a kicker. Pat McAfee would ridicule me for this, but Jaden Fielding, the Ohio State kicker, I mean, I think he missed two field goals, and if he hit those, they would have won. So I think it's you have to be able to hit your kicks. That's just something that and no game's ever lost within one play, but it definitely really didn't help.
I think a really big underlying factor was the fact that Michigan didn't have their top offensive performer and defensive performer. Will Johnson, he's out, I believe, with an ACL tear, and then Colson Loveland also missed this game. And so it's just awesome. It's so weird because they did so well in that 2 minute drive passing the ball because Michigan doesn't have their top corner, but yet they just didn't decide to throw it. And of all the years that Ohio State could have won the rushing attack, it absolutely should have been this year. I mean, you have Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, both NFL caliber players who are going to do great things in the NFL, and they just haven't been able to put up a good rushing attack against Michigan, and let alone any team all season. So I think that also played a really big factor as well. But we're going to jump over to the ACC, where the Syracuse Orange upset the Miami Hurricanes in a 21-point comeback, the largest comeback in program history. It was a high-scoring battle. Kyle McCord, it was a little bit of a full circle, he said in a post-game interview, watching Ohio State lose to Michigan and then him beating Miami. So it was just a really great performance from McCord.
Yeah, I will say, hats off to Fran Brown and the job he's done in his few years up in Syracuse. He's really turned the program around. They're finishing 9-3 bowl eligible. They're going to go to a great bowl game. But this game, they were down 21-0 at one point. And it just kind of showed the grit and determination that this Orange team has and the faith and the leadership that Coach Brown has and the control of the locker room he has. And Kyle McCord had a great day. Trevor Pena, I'm pretty sure is how you say the last name, Trevor Pena, and LaQuint Allen, a very fun name to say. They both had tremendous games for the Orange. And this game knocked Miami out of ACC championship contention. Correct me if I'm wrong, they're completely out of it.
It's SMU and Clemson.
Yeah, Clemson. So just hats off to them and hats off to the Orange community.
I feel like it's another game that shows that Miami doesn't really have what it takes to be a national champion or even that an ACC championship. Going back to the Georgia Tech game where they just could not stop the option, as well as they couldn't really get a consistent offensive attack. You know, they have Cam Ward, the super talented guy who goes off in these games, but they have costly turnovers. That fumble recovered for a touchdown just after recovering a fumble of their own is just so costly. And their defense allowing 42 points is just something that can't be happening for a team that's supposed to be a contender. You know, it shows like their weaknesses, but overall, I want to highlight the amazing performance from Cam Ward. You know, despite the loss, still throwing for 350 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. He's certainly a talent that was absolutely enjoyable to watch.
I agree, Kevin Ward. Super, super great day. I think I had to be really critical of Mario Cristobal. Again, like I like to say, you know, there's no the Miami head coach. I like to say, you know, no game is ever lost or won within one play. It's all you know, combination. But I can't really see his logic in not going for the touchdown on that fourth down. I guess he had just a lot of faith in his defense, but when your defense has already allowed 42 points through 4 quarters, I personally wouldn't have a lot of faith in my defense. While I appreciate that he does have that faith, I think that going for a touchdown was a much safer bet right there. Besides, even if they missed, you still had all 3 of your timeouts. You could have gotten the ball back. I think overall that wasn't a very smart decision. And in the end, I think, you know, I'm not gonna say that lost in the game. I'm gonna say it surely didn't help.
Completely agree.
Yeah, and with that point, you know, you have Cam Ward, like a top 5 like Heisman contender, along with probably one of the if not the greatest wide receiver in Miami Hurricane history, Xavier Restrepo, who's just been so consistent throughout all his years there, and just not giving him a chance to like go out and make a play to try and win the game. I also did not like that decision by Mario Cristobal, and it really ended up costing them the game. And so with those 2 upsets, it does cause a little bit of a snag in college football playoff contention. But here are the teams that are guaranteed to be in there: Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, SMU, Indiana, Ohio State, and Tennessee are all guaranteed spots in the college football playoff. And we're going to see with some more championships, conference championships, who will get each seed and whatnot, with Oregon going up against Penn State in the Big Ten, SMU against Clemson, the ACC, Georgia, Texas in the SEC, Boise State, UNLV in the Mountain West, and then Arizona State, Iowa State in the Big 12. I think that covers just about everything, if I'm not mistaken. So with all these college football playoffs, and we know what teams are going to be in, what teams are kind of fringe, who do you guys think are your dark horse college football playoff team?
For me, I feel like they shouldn't really be a dark horse because of how they've handled the year. I think it's the SMU Mustangs. I mean, the way that program has been playing in the ACC, they came over from the American Conference where they were playing lackluster competition. And they come into this ACC conference, this whole new conference realignment. they kind of tend to be forgotten about as a new addition to the ACC, with all the focus being on Stanford and Cal joining from the West Coast. But even though they were forgotten, I feel like they put up an incredible year, a one-loss team. Still, I feel like is heavily disrespected from the AP poll and just the college football playoff completely. So that they should be a tad bit higher, but there's been such elite play that I feel like they've kind of been neglected in a way. So I feel like SMU, and I'm forgetting who their quarterback is.
Kevin Jennings.
Kevin Jennings, yeah, he's a stud. So I feel like they're my pick to take the ACC and potentially make it to the semis.
I agree with you entirely on SMU. For myself, I love Brashard Smith. He had an absolutely amazing season. He's been pounding that rock, but I know they're not guaranteed, but a team I really like is Arizona State. They've done really good in the second half in the Big 12. They've shown a lot of improvement throughout the season. Huge win in rival week over Arizona, and they've just constantly risen throughout the second half. Multiple ranked wins to end the year against Kansas State and BYU. It's a team that I really like, and whoever is the team that draws them first round isn't going to have an easy time with them. And if they can get a win with all their momentum going right now, I really could see them possibly having a nice Cinderella story. Sam Levitt is an absolutely amazing quarterback so far in this second half, totally rejuvenated, and it's a really enjoyable team to watch play.
I definitely agree with that Sun Devil statement, and I also agree with that SMU statement. I really don't hate South Carolina right now. I feel after that Clemson win, they look very put together. They look very calm. Like they were down 14-7. It was very gritty, especially in that first half. Very gritty defensive fight in that first half, trying to just stay within trying to stay within punching range of Clemson. Clemson took a 14-7 lead, I believe, into the fourth quarter, or maybe at least late into the third quarter, and the Gamecocks they didn't freak out. They kept it calm and they were able to play good enough football to beat Clemson by 3. Now Clemson, we knew they were a fringe team. We knew that they weren't exactly guaranteed in or guaranteed out for the college football playoffs. But if they are lucky enough, because the Gamecocks, I don't believe they're playing in a conference championship. So if the cards fall their way, if the Gamecocks somehow find themselves hitting that 11th, 12th spot in the college football playoffs, I see them taking at least one win if they can, really work this week in practice, work in the next couple of weeks of practice, and I think they can put at least one win up on the board in the postseason.
Yeah, I think the South Carolina quarterback, Lenoris Sellers, is probably the most underrated quarterback in all of college football. My dark horse pick is maybe not as quite. I feel like it's been a really team that's been kind of under the radar. I'm going with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I mean, I know it was a really high scoring affair against USC, and they did get bailed out with those 2 pick sixes to end the game. But watching Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love just get more and more comfortable, this is probably one of the most dangerous rushing attacks in the entire country. In the California game, they had 3 rushers that had, I believe, all over 50 yards and 1 touchdown. Riley Leonard, amazing athlete with the ball in his hands. Jeremiah Love is an awesome running back. I just think that ever since that Northern Illinois loss, that was probably the best thing to happen to the Fighting Irish this entire season. It just turned on a click. They've been working. They haven't lost a game since, and they look to make a deep run into the playoffs. And I think that's a team that a lot of people should probably look out for. They're guaranteed a spot, and I'm excited to see how this college football playoffs all play out.
Now, Brian, I feel like I got to respond to that. I haven't seen Notre Dame beat a team that I can firmly say is a college football playoff level team. I haven't seen them beat a team that is, a team that I really, find as a threat and could be like, at least a contender to be in the college football playoffs. How do you see like they haven't exactly played the best schedule? I think their toughest games were probably, Army, Navy, I guess if you count USC, but again, I think they're pretty fraudulent this year. They beat Florida State, which everyone knows that they turned out to be the biggest bust of all time. They haven't played a team personally that I can see is like a team that really a special team, a team that's going to go far in the playoffs. So what do you see? Do you think they're going to play against these top level teams or not?
Well, I think Arjun wants to say something.
Yeah, we're talking about Notre Dame, right?
Yeah. Who have they played?
Okay, so the first week of the season, they went down to College Station and they played in Aggie Land against A&M under the lights. That's incredibly difficult to do and one of the hardest
And then the
atmospheres.
next week they lost to Northern Illinois. That's not the same team that's playing right now. That's not the same team that's playing right now. The team at the beginning of the season is different from the team at the end of the season. I'll say that. I'll stick by that.
I understand that, but they still went in there with a new transfer quarterback and Riley Leonard coming over from Duke, and they went to a night game at Kyle Fields, and they beat the Aggies, which I know they weren't highly thought of at the beginning of the season, but now they were just playing Texas for a spot at the SEC championship game. They could have easily they could have been playing in Atlanta next week, right? That is a competent football program. And I know that they lost to NIU, which is a huge blemish on the record. Losing to a lower tier D1 school is a huge blemish. But at the same time, you got to sit back and you got to say, whoa, okay. So they have one a pretty big blemish to NIU, but other than that, they've been playing stout. It's like they had this little hump and they got a little stuck and they got a little push.
Right. I'm not saying that this Notre Dame team is a bad football team. I'm saying Braden's saying that they're going to be a dark horse in the team, and I think dark horse means you're at least making it to the semifinals. You're going to put in a fight in the semifinals. I personally don't see. I don't think Notre Dame is going to be able to get past. They might get to the semifinals, but I don't think they're going to be able to put up much of a fight, at least in the semifinals, because like you just said, Texas A&M, they're not even ranked in the AP poll this week. They've completely had a drop off. They're not. I agree that no team at the beginning of the season, same at the end. Maybe they were better at the beginning of the season, and to walk down to College Station under the lights first week is a very hard task. But at the same time, you're losing to NIU. You're losing to fringe AP poll ranked teams. You're beating fringe AP poll teams like Navy and Army, and I don't see a quality win that's going to let them be a dark horse in this tournament.
Well, to say one thing is they say this argument about Notre Dame every single year, and they've gone in almost every single year and proven that they are a team to be worth rooting for. Just in 2020, they moved to the ACC and they made it to the ACC championship game and barely lost to Clemson. Year after year, Notre Dame proves that despite the easy schedules, they are a talented team. And you want to talk
Notre
about
Dame's in the ACC?
No, they're not. This was in 2020. But you talk about at the Texas A&M dropping out of the rankings now. That's without their starting quarterback. They were leading the SEC for the majority of the year until they lost their quarterback. And now you look at their offensive attack, and it's so dangerous with their rushing attack with both Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love. Though they haven't had any recent wins that are absolutely standout, but you have this Power 5 bias where you consider Army not a good win, or you consider Navy not a good win, just because they're not in a Power 5 conference.
I'm not calling
Both
Army
of
not a
those
good.
both of those games were wins by over 30 points to teams that were ranked.
I'm not saying Army and Navy aren't a good team, and yes, I can see why you claim I have a Power 5 bias right now. I'm saying Army isn't playing that great of teams, and yes, Army is a good team, no doubt, but the AP poll is still ranking them at 25th. That's still not like that high of a ranking. You can't. The college football playoff is 1 through 12. You're not playing the 25th ranked team. You're playing the top 12 teams in the nation. I don't see how Notre Dame, who hasn't beaten a top 12 team, a top 10 team, a top 15 team, is going to be able to hang with teams who are in the top 12. You're not going to be able to hang with Oregon. You're not going to be able to hang with Ash and GT. You're not going to be able to hang with any of those teams. And I think we're already taking too long in this segment. But I don't think Notre Dame. I think they are a semifinal team at best.
Well, then you could say the exact same thing for Texas with their wins. Only a 10-point win versus A&M with a backup quarterback.
Well, we weren't talking about Texas.
They beat a 6-6 Vanderbilt team by 3 points. They beat an unranked Oklahoma team, and besides that, their only loss against Georgia. Texas doesn't have any notable wins. You don't consider them a fraud. There's so many teams up here that are just like Notre Dame that don't actually have a huge top 10 win.
I never said I didn't think Texas was a fraud. I don't think Texas is going to do that well either. I think Quinn Ewers is doing. Yes. They got blown out of the water by Georgia.
I wouldn't say blown out of the waters.
Okay, fine. They lost to Georgia.
15-point game.
Again, I think Texas is a semifinal team at best.
I guess everyone's a fraud, apparently, according to Charles.
That is not what I said.
Is Penn State a fraud too?
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. The best team we've beaten all year is USC.
They're not a good team.
Well,
SC's not a good team. SC's not a good team. SC's not a good team.
Is Ohio State a fraud too? Because they're only half decent win was Penn State, and according to you, they're a fraud.
I never said Penn State was a fraud. I said SC was bad.
no, by your logic, I'm a fraud. Not I'm a fraud. They're a fraud.
Yeah, Arjun's a fraud, guys. Come
Wait,
on.
who's a fraud? Penn State?
I'm a D1 fraud.
I feel like this year. I feel like this year in college football, there's a lot of teams that are like in the top five that you don't really feel like are top five. Like Ohio State, Penn State, Texas, Notre Dame. They're all kind of shaky. You're like, who have they beaten? But then they're top five. I don't know. That's the one thing that I've kind of taken away from this year in college football.
It's what I've been saying. It's the big name bias. It's the Power Five bias.
Okay, let's move on. We're
All
talking
right.
still on.
Okay. Now let's move on to the NFL. And while it was all the games this
Whoa,
week.
we're not going to talk about the fights. We're not going to talk about the fights for Rivalry Week.
Oh yes, I forgot about
Because
the fights.
I would like to have a conversation about this with some people.
Rivalry weekend brings out a lot of emotions, and apparently a lot of the emotions that players want to settle with their hands, their fists, and their feet. So there was a lot of fighting. Tyler's Michigan Wolverines tried to plant the flag in the middle of the Ohio State. Ohio State did not take this kindly, and there's a lot of fighting. We saw it in North Carolina, NC State. There was flag throwing. There was a lot of fighting. Arizona State planting I believe it was the pitchfork on the
Trident.
Arizona Center, the trident. Yeah, I mean, they're like the same thing. It's just like a whole lot of fights. I think this is putting a huge blemish on college sports. I know that, yeah, it's going to add more stuff that you can promo for like the rivalry to show how heated and disputed it is, but it's just a bunch of 20-year-olds like throwing fists, getting hurt. I mean, police had to use pepper spray for the Michigan-Ohio State game. I've never seen that before. I was so confused when I saw two Michigan players just like sitting on the sideline with their eyes closed and like wincing. I didn't know what was happening. I don't know. I think this is just terrible for the sport.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I will say that there was an incident where a scuffle broke out over a flag planting at midfield in all Power Four conferences. I saw the stat. It was Michigan, Ohio State, NC State, UNC, Florida, Florida State, and then Arizona State, Arizona, which is crazy to think about. This rivalry week has been the most heated rivalry week we've seen in recent years. But like you said, Brayden, it's definitely a blemish on both college football, but also the programs and individuals as a whole. Kind of speaks to the culture. I mean, those are super talented young men and individuals, and fighting like that doesn't show a huge amount of class. But at the same time, it's so entertaining. It's so fun to watch. You kidding me? I'm not sure if you saw the USC Notre Dame one, but this old lineman straight up smacked him bonk in the head, helmet and all. I know that hurt his hand too. Just boom, 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 boom. You're trying to tell me that isn't entertaining to watch? I mean, I know that it looks bad on the university and the program as a whole, but my God, that is so fun to watch.
Great addition to the sport, in my opinion. After every rivalry game, there should be a little boxing rink set up in the middle. Any players that want to bash it out, just go in the middle. It's the best thing that could happen to the sport.
Yeah, that's quite the opinion, Tyler. I think fighting doesn't really have a place in college sports. These are 20-year-olds who, one, aren't getting paid. Two, this is like, I don't even know how to describe it. I understand with people who are trying to defend their field, who when people go out to the center of the field and they plant something on their field, I understand why you're trying to defend your field. Like this is like, college sports means so much to people because that's your home. That is your people. That is what you are defending. And so when people go out to your field and they try and plant something in the middle and you have to go defend that, that's obviously going to create a lot of scuffle. I don't think planting a flag in the middle of the field is very respectful. So from what I can tell, it was North Carolina State versus North Carolina, Florida State, Arizona State, Penn State versus Maryland had a little scuffle or something like that. I don't know if Arjun can attest to that. Yeah. Auburn, Alabama, they had a little something. Texas A&M, Michigan, Ohio State, and then that USC Notre Dame small little skirmish. I think when this many fights are happening during rivalry week, this is not what the sport is about. This sport is about sportsmanship. This is not sportsmanship, okay? If you're going out to the middle of the field, and yes, I understand, it's tradition, it's taking territory, it's what you want to do. It's saying screw you to your rivals because you hate them so much. That's not what this sport is about. This sport is about playing the best football that you can and being the best man you can. That is terrible. I feel if I was a coach, I would not allow that from my team. I think some coach, Sarkisian, that's what he did. Texas, and that's what he did. Steve Sarkisian. He's had a bit of a shaky pass with SC, but I really respected that he forced his Longhorns to go back into the locker room rather than do anything on the Aggie field. I don't think this fighting has any place in college sports, and I think it all begins with the flag planting. So I don't think that has any place in college sports.
I
All right.
completely disagree. This is something that's happened for many years. Baker Mayfield planting the flag. This happens all the time, and it's an epic shot. It's a show of power that you just won. And this happened. Michigan planted their flag in Ohio State's field 2 years ago. No fight broke out. The fights are being insinuated by a losing team being salty. If you don't want the other team to plant their flag on the center of your field, you should win the game. And
no, you should learn how to win with class. You should learn how to win with class. It's not an amount of the losers. It's not like you act like the losers aren't going out there and trying. It's sometimes you try your best and you just can't win. That's not how this works. It's people who are winning and they don't know how to win with class.
There's a difference between planting a flag and throwing a fist, because planting flags has happened many times before with no fights. Plenty of times. And I understand you're saying it's no class. There's not meant to be class in a rivalry. It's meant to be heated. It's meant to be hated. You're meant to dislike the other team. If you are shaking hands, then can you really say that it's the most heated rivalry in college sports? You can't. The whole point is that it's heated. The whole point is that you want to hit the other person. And Michigan planting the flag is something they've done before, but the fight was something that was not done before. It was something that Ohio State players were mad about because they had lost to Michigan all 4 years that they were seniors. And this is something that was started by the losing team being salty about the winning team being victorious.
I think I think a lot of this is personal for people, and if it's getting personal, it's being insinuated by the flag planting. I understand it's tradition, but not every tradition needs to be carried on. Okay, so no, I don't think we should allow flag planting anymore. I think if it's going to cause this many fights, this is not what college football is.
It's the same thing as rushing the field. When you upset a team at home, you rush the field.
Rushing the field isn't fighting anybody.
There are plenty of fans that get into the faces of other players and insinuate reactions out of the losing team. Happens all the time. You see videos all over social media. Should we ban field rushing? We see it in college basketball.
The coaches can't control the kids. The coaches can't control the college students. That's up to like the dean and whatnot. The coach can control his players and whether they plant a field and whether they plant a flag at midfield. That's something different.
I will say, you two both have an argument for either side. And I feel like I do agree with Tyler in a way, but I feel like I agree with Charlie in a way where you can do it, but it can't get to a certain level. If a fight breaks out, and then you go back to your separate locker rooms. But in the sense of the Michigan-Ohio State game, people were getting pepper sprayed like it was a protest. I don't think that's really gotten through the skulls of some people. But pepper spray is what police use when a protest gets ugly, or as in self-defense. That's how bad these fights were getting. And I know that there's passion, and I know that there is a deep level of hatred between different programs in college sports and in sports in general. But if you can't get to a point, or if you get to a point where the police needs to be involved and kids are getting pepper spray in their eyes and lose vision, then that has gone too far.
All right, are we all done? And anything else to add?
I'm done.
All right, and with the couple minutes that we have left, we're just going to jump over to the NFL. Lots of one-score games, really close games. Charlie, I know that you saw the Viking comeback. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Really, really fun game. Thought good defensive battle in total, and then in the first half, and then second half, offense really picked it up all over. Big shout out to Aaron Jones. He had a rough game through a lot of it, but then he went and scored a game-winning touchdown. So just again, never give up.
That definitely helped my fantasy team. Him and Jordan Addison were absolutely blowing it, but then to end the game, they both did really well. And in the AFC North, obviously, we're going to have big games. It's going to be a shootout. The Steelers versus the Bengals was not disappointing at all. I mean, it wasn't just an offensive explosion, it was defensive as well. the 50-yard pick six by Cam Taylor-Britt early in the game, and then the Peyton Wilson, the rookie, with a 20-yard fumble return touchdown. I mean, this game just had everything that you could ask for.
I mean, yeah, this was I'm not gonna say a classic AFC North matchup because those games tend to be more defensive, but this was definitely a shootout. AFC North in the recent years has gotten a lot closer instead of a wide open division. If you were to say at the beginning of the season that the Steelers were sitting atop of it, people would probably call you crazy. But this game showed a lot of grit and determination from both sides. I will say on the Bengals side of things, I feel like they're wasting away the prime of Joe Burrow. I mean, he played amazing today. He had 3 touchdowns. He only had like 10 or so incompletions, on which 3 of those his receivers dropped. Jamar Chase was getting a boatload of receptions. He had 6, even though he was getting double covered, and they were keying on him because he's the main source of offense for them. And I feel as if they were in the Super Bowl not so too long ago, and they had found a way to get there. Zach Taylor had brought his team there. And then from there, I feel like each year they've regressed more and more. Joe has gotten injured, and they haven't built the line up to protect him. And even with this subpar offensive line, these subpar offensive weapons, besides Jamar Chase, he's still getting the job done to what he can do.
Anything else to add?
Joe Burr, I don't know. He's good.
Mike Gesicki, did he catch a touchdown today?
I'm not sure,
Joe Burrow
but
caught a touchdown?
no, Mike.
He did not have a touchdown.
I want to see the gritty now.
No, I do think it is kind of wasting away at Joe Burrow, and I mean I've seen all these these memes and these jokes about Joe Burrow throwing 350 yards and 4 touchdowns only to watch his defense lose the game for him, and that's really just a big thing. I mean, the two things once you drafted Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, I mean you had it. There's been 2 things that the Bengals have needed ever since Joe Burrow's gotten there: an offensive line and a defense, and you have built neither. I know that you've drafted the young Georgia tackle Amarius Mims, so he'll have time to develop. But other than that, I mean, it's been what, like 4 or 5 years since Joe Burrow was drafted.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be enough time to make some either free agent acquisitions or build up like a defense to actually like go and compete. Because if you think about it, if the Bengals had a decent offensive line and a decent defense, they would be easily like way above 500 right now, but now they're sitting at like 4-7 right now, which is just, or 4-8 now, I believe. Yeah, that's just insane to think. Watching Joe Burrow have almost an MVP caliber season, only to be just, I don't even know. It's frustrating for me to watch. I do feel really bad for him.
Yeah, it's crazy to think because the Bengals front office, they've made questionable moves on the defensive side. They let Jesse Bates walk to the Atlanta Falcons when they could have picked him up on a close to league minimum, which is crazy to say out loud. And instead, he got a record-breaking deal from the Falcons. He wanted to stay in Cincinnati. Cincinnati didn't value him. They instead valued Trey Hendrickson and Chidobe Awuzie.
Okay, but the Trey Hendrickson value is
100%.
very, very much garnered.
But would you rather have Chidobe Awuzie or Jesse Bates?
Jesse Bates.
Exactly. And they paid Chidobe Awuzie a good amount of money too. I think he's making like $10-11 million a year.
All right, and with that will conclude another episode of the Coastal Feuds podcast. Thank you guys for joining in. Once again, I'm your host, Braden Plord. Alongside me, Arjun Pirani, Tyler Lombardi, and Charlie Van Dyke. We'll see you guys next week, and make sure to follow our socials on Instagram and Twitter. Have a good week.